The Alpha's nanny is actually a princess on the run. A story about a woman who gave up a crown, a palace, and a kingdom to survive. A woman who traded silk gowns for plain clothes and a forged resume, who walked away from everything she'd ever known because staying meant a fate worse than death. A woman who never expected that hiding would lead her somewhere she might actually want to stay. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome. I am so glad you found your way here today. Before we begin, I need to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments below, because this community spans the globe and every single location makes my heart full. And how are you doing today? Whatever you're carrying right now, I hope this story gives you a few hours of magic and escape. You deserve it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do it right now. It is completely free, it takes 2 seconds, and it means everything. Hit that notification bell too so you never miss a new story. We are building something beautiful here together, and I want you to be part of every chapter. Okay? Now, let me tell you about a princess who became a nanny. And the cold, grieving Alpha who had no idea what just walked through his gate. Sera kept her eyes down as she approached the Thornfield Pack border. Not out of submission. Out of strategy. Princesses were taught to enter rooms like they owned them, spine straight, chin level, gaze forward. That walk had been trained into her since she was 3 years old. It was also, unfortunately, the kind of walk that made people look twice. And right now, Sera could not afford anyone looking twice. She had a forged name. Forged references. A second-hand bag containing 4 changes of clothes, a combat knife strapped to her thigh, and approximately 47 hours before Lord Cain's hunters picked up her trail again. She needed to disappear. And the best place to disappear was somewhere nobody would ever think to look for a princess. A grieving Alpha's house in the middle of nowhere, raising a 5-year-old daughter alone, desperately needing a nanny that qualified. Name? The border guard was large, suspicious, and deeply unimpressed. Sera Voss, she said. Her voice came out perfectly flat. Perfectly unremarkable. Months of practice. I have an interview scheduled. Nanny position. The guard looked her up and down with the kind of assessment that was about threat level, not attraction. Alpha Cross doesn't hire easily. I'm aware. Sera met his eyes just long enough to be respectful without being challenging. Another calculated choice. I came prepared. The guard grunted and stepped aside. Thornfield Pack was nothing like Silverwood. Sera had grown up in a royal pack that glittered, white stone walls and silver banners and the kind of manicured beauty that existed to impress. Thornfield was the opposite. Dark timber buildings. Practical, functional, stripped of anything decorative. The pack members who passed her in the courtyard moved efficiently, spoke quietly, and didn't smile. Not unhappy, exactly. Just heavy. Like the whole pack was carrying something it hadn't figured out how to put down yet. Sera felt it the moment she crossed the border, a pressure behind her sternum that had nothing to do with anxiety. Her gift. The ability every woman in the Silverwood royal line carried. She could read pack bonds. Feel the emotional current running beneath the surface of any wolf community like a river under ice. And Thornfield's river was cold. Quiet. Grieving. It had been grieving for 3 years. You're the nanny candidate. The voice came from behind her. Sera turned. Alpha Eli Cross was not what she expected. She had read his file. She'd read everything available before choosing this pack as her hiding place, because princesses were also trained to research. She knew he was 30, widowed, alpha of a mid-sized territory with strong borders and minimal political alliances. She knew he was considered cold, difficult, and had cycled through 11 nannies in 3 years. What the file hadn't conveyed was the sheer physical presence of him. He was tall, alpha tall, the kind of height that rearranged a room, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore a plain shirt rolled to the elbows and the expression of a man who had decided, at some point, that hoping for things was a waste of energy. Sera's royal gift surged without warning. She felt the current of his grief like a wave, vast and deep and so carefully contained that she suspected most people never even saw the surface ripple. She also felt something else. A flicker. A pull. There and gone so fast she almost convinced herself she'd imagined it. She hadn't imagined it. Yes, Sera said, keeping her expression neutral. Sera Voss. I have references. I've read them, Eli said. His eyes moved over her once, assessing. Whatever he concluded, it didn't soften his expression. Follow me. He didn't wait to see if she would. The interview happened in his office, which was as stripped and functional as the rest of the pack. No photographs on the walls. One plant in the corner that was surviving despite clearly receiving minimal attention. A child's drawing taped to the edge of his desk, the only warm thing in the room. Eli sat across from her and asked questions for 40 minutes. Not standard questions. Hard ones. What would she do if his daughter woke screaming at 3 a.m.? What if a pack member spoke to Lily inappropriately? What if Lily asked about her mother? Sera answered every one honestly, which was, she thought, the greatest irony. The most truthful conversation she'd had in months, and she was sitting under a false name. You have no pack affiliation listed, Eli said finally. I've been independent for 2 years, Sera said. Technically accurate. I prefer working for smaller packs. Less politics. His eyes narrowed slightly. Your hands. Sera kept them perfectly still on the table. What about them? They don't match your resume. You've listed 5 years of domestic work. These aren't the hands of someone who's spent 5 years doing physical labor. Sera held his gaze. He was sharper than she'd anticipated. Much sharper. I moisturize, she said. A pause. Then the ghost of something crossed his face, not quite a smile. Gone before she could confirm it. Daddy! The door burst open and 5-year-old came barreling through it like a small force of nature. Lily Cross had her father's dark hair and her own entirely different energy, wild curls, paint-stained fingers, and the particular fearlessness of a child who has never been told the world is dangerous. She skidded to a stop in front of Sera. And stared. Sera had been stared at by kings, diplomats, and wolves who wanted to own her. None of them had stared at her quite like this, with the open, absolute certainty of a child who had simply recognized something true. Lily, Eli said, a warning in his voice. I'm in an interview. It's her, Lily said. Sera felt the hair rise on her arms. I'm sorry? From my dream. Lily said it the way children say facts, simply, without drama, as if the adults in the room were being slow. You smell like silver and rain. I dreamed about you. She turned to her father with absolute confidence. She's the one, Daddy. Can she stay? The silence in the room was very loud. Eli Cross stared at his daughter. Then, slowly, he looked at Sera, and this time, something in his storm cloud eyes was different. Unsettled. Like a man who had just heard a door knock from a room that was supposed to be empty. Sera held very still. Because her gift was screaming at her. Because the pack bond she'd felt when she crossed the border, cold and grieving and quiet, had just shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. And because, for the first time in months, the fear that had been living in her chest since she fled her palace felt, inexplicably, smaller. You're hired, Eli said. His voice came out rougher than before. He cleared his throat. 30-day trial. You'll have your own room in the main house. My rules are. Daddy. Lily climbed into the empty chair beside Sera with the confidence of someone who had already decided. Her name is Sera. I know her name, Lily. She's going to stay forever, Lily said serenely. I already know. Sera looked at the little girl who smelled like pack and pine and something achingly familiar. Then at the father who was refusing to look at either of them. She had come here to disappear. To be invisible for long enough that Lord Cain lost her trail and she could figure out her next move. She had not come here to be recognized by a 5-year-old with dreaming eyes. Had not come here to feel a fated mate pulled toward a widower who hadn't smiled in 3 years. Had not come here to feel, for the first time since she ran, like she might have accidentally arrived somewhere real. But then, nobody tells a princess where fate decides to hide her. Sera had survived royal courts, assassination attempts, and 3 weeks living in the wilderness on nothing but her combat training and sheer stubbornness. She had negotiated trade treaties at 16, addressed foreign dignitaries at 18, and once talked down a pack dispute that had been simmering for a decade, all before her 20th birthday. Nothing had prepared her for 5-year-old Lily Cross at 6 in the morning. Sera. A small hand patted her face with the precision of someone who had decided that sleep was a personal affront. Sera. The pancakes won't make themselves. Lily. Sera opened one eye. It is 6 o'clock. The sun is up, Lily said, with the absolute logic of a child. So we should be up. Sera stared at the ceiling of her small room in the main house. Through the wall, she could hear the pack already moving. Wolves rose early, and Thornfield was no exception. She could feel the pack bond humming like a quiet current, more active now than it had been the night before. Lily was still patting her face. All right, Sera said. Pancakes. Lily beamed like Sera had announced something magnificent. The kitchen became their first real territory together. Lily was methodical for her age. She knew where everything lived, moved through the space with the confidence of a child who had spent years in it, and had very strong opinions about the pancake-to-blueberry ratio. Sera followed her lead, quietly delighted. Daddy doesn't make pancakes, Lily confided, pushing a stool to the counter and climbing up with practiced ease. He makes eggs. Eggs every day. Even on my birthday. Every birthday? He tries, Lily said generously. He just doesn't know how to be soft yet. Sera paused, stirring. How to be soft? Lily looked at her with those eyes that were too old for her face. When Mama died, he put all the soft parts away. He thinks I don't know. She picked up a blueberry and placed it in the batter with great deliberation. But I know. Sera said nothing. Her gift had gone very still, the way it did when something true was being said. He'll be soft again, Lily added, with complete certainty. Now that you're here. Before Sera could respond, the kitchen door opened. Eli stood in the doorway in running clothes, damp from an early patrol, his dark hair pushed back from his face. He looked at Lily on the stool. Then at Sera. Then at the bowl of pancake batter. Something moved through his expression too fast to name. You're up early, he said. Lily is very persuasive, Sera said. I got her up, Lily reported proudly. We're making pancakes. You have to eat them, Daddy. Even if you want eggs. I like eggs, Eli said, but he moved to the coffee maker without argument. He didn't leave. That was the thing Sera noticed. He could have taken his coffee and gone. Instead, he leaned against the counter and watched Lily stir the batter with her tongue between her teeth in concentration. The soft parts, Sera thought, weren't as far away as he believed. Over the following 2 weeks, a pattern formed that Sera hadn't planned for and couldn't quite stop. She had come here to be invisible. To do her job quietly, leave no impression, give the hunters nothing to follow. Instead, she found herself at the center of something that was slowly, stubbornly coming alive. Lily was the obvious part. The child attached herself to Sera with the simple, absolute trust of someone who had decided the matter was settled. They read together every evening, Lily sprawled across Sera's lap, Sera's voice going low and steady through the words, both of them warm under the weight of a story. But the pack was changing too. Pack members who had barely acknowledged her in the first days began stopping to talk. The cook, an older wolf named Bet, started leaving extra food at Sera's place at the table. The 2 young pack members who handled border patrol began nodding to her when she passed, the small, significant acknowledgement of someone accepted rather than merely tolerated. Sera felt it through her gift. The pack bond was shifting. The cold current was warming, fractionally, the way ice at the edge of a river softens before it releases. She was doing this. Without meaning to, without permission, she was settling into this pack like she belonged here. It terrified her. Eli noticed things. That was the problem Sera hadn't fully accounted for. Most alphas led through dominance, presence, power, the kind of authority that didn't require close attention. Eli led through observation. He was quiet in a way that meant he was watching, and he watched everything. He noticed that she moved through the pack house like someone trained to know where every exit was. He noticed that she read the territorial maps on the wall in his office, visible through the open door, with the focused attention of someone who understood what she was looking at. He noticed that when pack members brought disputes to him and Sera happened to be nearby, she already knew the relevant pack law before he'd finished explaining it. You studied, he said one afternoon, appearing beside her at the maps. Sera didn't startle. She'd felt him coming. I like knowing the territory. Most nannies don't read territorial boundary maps in their free time. I'm thorough, Sera said. Eli was quiet for a moment. She could feel him considering the particular quality of attention he brought to things he hadn't yet decided about. Where are you from? He asked. Not for the first time. Northern Territories, Sera said. Same answer as always. Vague enough to be useless. Which pack? Independent. She met his gaze steadily. I told you in the interview. He held her eyes for 3 seconds longer than was strictly necessary. You did, he said. And left. Sera let out a slow breath. He didn't believe her. He was patient about it. He wasn't going to demand answers he hadn't earned the right to yet, but he didn't believe her. And the longer she stayed, the harder it was going to be to keep the distance that safety required. Especially when the mate bond kept doing what it was doing. She felt it every time he was near, a warmth behind her sternum that was entirely distinct from her gift. Her gift was a river she stood beside. The mate bond was something she was standing in. It had been building since the moment she walked through his gate, and it did not care at all about her plans for invisibility. She caught herself watching him with Lily. The way his entire face changed when his daughter laughed, not dramatically, just a loosening, like a knot releasing one fiber at a time. The way he was always slightly angled toward Lily in a room, even when he was talking to someone else. The way he checked, every evening, that Lily's window was latched before he went to bed. He was a man who had locked away his softness to survive his grief. And every day, Sera watched him forget, briefly, that he'd done that. She was in serious trouble. On the 15th day, the hunters came close enough that she smelled them. She was in the garden with Lily. They had an ongoing project involving sunflowers and very ambitious architectural plans for a bug house, when the wind shifted. Sera's hands went still in the soil. There. On the pack's eastern wind. 2 wolves, unfamiliar scent, moving with the deliberate patience of someone who was looking rather than passing through. Sera? Lily looked up. What's wrong? Nothing, little one. Sera smiled, and it was her court smile, the one that showed nothing. Go inside and find Bet, would you? Tell her I said you can have a biscuit before lunch. Lily's eyes narrowed with the suspicious intelligence of a child who knew when adults were managing them. But the promise of a pre-lunch biscuit was powerful. Okay, she said. But Sera. Inside, sweetheart. Quick as you can. The moment Lily disappeared through the back door, Sera straightened. The court smile dropped. What replaced it was something older, the particular stillness of a woman who had been trained since childhood to understand that grace and lethality were not opposites. She moved to the garden wall and listened. The hunters were circling the eastern border. Not breaching, not yet. Probing. Looking for a scent trail that she'd been careful to suppress, but careful wasn't the same as impossible, and these were Cain's best wolves, which meant they were very, very good. You heard them. Eli's voice came from directly behind her. Sera turned. He was standing at the garden gate, watching her with an expression she hadn't seen before, not the usual guarded assessment. Something sharper. More present. 2 wolves on the eastern border, Sera said. She'd stopped performing casualness. They don't belong to any neighboring pack. I know. Eli moved to stand beside her, scanning the tree line. My patrol picked them up an hour ago. I was going to tell you after Lily went to bed. A pause. How did you hear them from here? Good ears, Sera said. Better than any beta I've ever met, Eli said quietly. Sera said nothing. They're looking for something. Eli continued, still watching the tree line. Or someone. He didn't look at her. You want to tell me anything? The question sat between them. Simple. Direct. Open-ended enough that she could deflect if she chose. Sera thought about her forged name. Her forged references. The combat knife still strapped to her thigh. The crown she'd left on her dressing table the night she ran. Not yet, she said finally. It wasn't a lie. It was a promise, the only honest thing she could offer him right now. Eli turned to look at her. Something moved through his storm cloud eyes, frustration, yes, but also something that looked almost like understanding. Like a man who knew what it was to carry something you weren't ready to say out loud. "All right," he said. "That's it. Just all right? I'm not going to force a confidence." He looked back at the tree line. "But Sera, whatever it is, whatever's out there." He paused. "It doesn't leave this border without going through me first." Through her gift, Sera felt the pack bond surge. Not cold anymore, not in this moment. In this moment it was something burning and certain, like a hearth lit in a house that had been dark too long. And through the mate bond, which she absolutely was not acknowledging, she felt Eli's wolf rise. Not in aggression. In something older and more absolute. Protection. The particular, bone-deep kind that had nothing to do with obligation. Sera looked at this man she had chosen as a hiding place, and felt the specific terror of realizing that somewhere in the last 15 days, he had become something else entirely. "Thank you," she said quietly. Eli nodded once. Then, "Lily will want you for the bug house after lunch." "I know," Sera said. "We have structural concerns about the east wing." He made a sound. Low and brief and completely unexpected. It was, unmistakably, a laugh. Sera filed it away like something precious. Like a first snowdrop. Like proof that the soft parts were still there, just waiting for someone patient enough to find them. The hunters stayed on the eastern border until nightfall. Then they withdrew. For now. The hunters came back on the 22nd day. This time, they didn't stay at the border. Sera knew before the alarm went up. She'd been sleeping lightly since their first appearance, the kind of shallow, ready sleep her combat trainer had called wolf's rest, which had always made her laugh considering she'd been learning it from a wolf. She felt the eastern border breach like a cold finger pressed to the back of her neck. She was dressed and out of bed before the first howl split the night. The pack gathering happened in the main courtyard, the natural assembly point when a breach was called. Pack members emerged from their homes in various states of readiness, the warriors already shifted or mid-shift, the others pulling on clothes and forming the instinctive protective clusters of a well-drilled community. Sera moved through them toward the tree line. She was counting. 3 cents from the east. 1 more from the north, they'd split to flank. Cain's hunters worked in coordinated patterns, which meant there was a 5th somewhere she hadn't placed yet. "Stay back." Eli materialized beside her in the dark, his alpha power already deployed, that invisible pressure that told every wolf in the vicinity that the person in charge had arrived. He was in partial shift, his eyes gold, every line of him pulled into the focused readiness of an alpha responding to threat. "There are 5, Sera said quietly. 3 east, 1 north, 1 I haven't found yet. They're flanking. They've done this before. They'll push in from 2 sides and use the confusion to extract the target while your wolves are occupied with the others." Eli went very still beside her. "How do you know their formation?" he said. Sera didn't answer. She was still tracking the 5th scent. "Sera. South Garden," she said. "Near Lily's window." The words landed like a stone in still water. Eli's control fractured. She felt it through the mate bond, a white-hot spike of parental terror that overrode everything else. He moved toward the house. "I'll get Lily," Sera said. "You handle the east breach. I'll handle the south." "You'll handle." Eli stopped. Turned. Looked at her in the darkness with an expression she couldn't fully read. "You're a nanny." "Go," Sera said. "Trust me." A single second. The longest second she could remember. Then Eli moved east, and Sera moved south. The hunter near Lily's window was good. He'd suppressed his scent carefully, chosen a shadow position that would be invisible to anyone without training, and was moving with the slow, patient economy of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Sera had been trained by the Silverwood Royal Guard from the age of 8. She was better. She came at him from above, over the garden wall, silent on the stone, dropping into the space between him and the window with a precision that made him inhale sharply in surprise. That half-second of surprise was all she needed. She had him disarmed, turned, and face first against the garden wall before he'd finished processing that she was there. "Tell Lord Cain," Sera said quietly against his ear, "that his bride says no." She rendered him unconscious with the particular pressure hold her trainer had called. The diplomat's mercy. Effective, leaving no permanent damage, recoverable in approximately 20 minutes. She lowered him to the ground, retrieved his weapon, and turned. Eli was standing at the garden gate. He had handled the east breach. She could hear the sounds of the fight concluding, her pack's wolves dominant, the intruders retreating or subdued. He had come to the south garden to check on her. He was staring at the unconscious hunter at her feet. At the weapon in her hand. At Sera herself, her court composure back in place, her breathing barely elevated, every inch of her exactly as she'd been trained to be in the aftermath of a threat. He was staring at her like he had never seen her before. "I need you to tell me," Eli said. His voice was very quiet. "Right now. All of it." Lily's voice drifted from an upstairs window. "Sera? Daddy? Go back to bed, little love," Sera called up. "Everything's fine. I'll come read to you in a moment. Promise?" "Promise." A pause. Then the sound of small feet retreating from the window. Sera looked at the unconscious hunter. Then at Eli. Then at the gap between who she'd been pretending to be and who she actually was, which had just become impossible to maintain. She set the weapon down on the garden wall. "My name is Seraphina," she said. "Princess Seraphina of the Silverwood Royal Pack. I am the only daughter of Queen Ilara and the late King Aldric. I have been running for 4 months from an arranged marriage to Alpha Lord Cain of the Eastern Territories, who my mother agreed to under duress and who I have since discovered has murdered at least 3 previous royal mates after using their bloodline gifts for political leverage." She heard Eli's sharp intake of breath. "I came here because Thornfield was remote, stable, and had no existing alliance with Cain's territories. I forged my references and my name because the alternative was being found. I intended to stay 2 months, establish a cold trail, and move on." She paused. "I did not intend to stay long enough to matter." The last sentence came out quieter than she'd planned. Eli was silent for a long time. The night settled around them, carrying the sounds of his pack securing the perimeter, the distant exchange of a patrol report, the ordinary machinery of a community keeping itself safe. "He murders them," Eli said finally. "Cain. The previous royal mates. Once he extracts what he needs from the bloodline gift." "Yes." "And your mother didn't know. Or chose not to know, which I tried to believe is different." Sera's voice stayed even. "She was being blackmailed. I found the correspondence before I left." "What does he want from you specifically?" "My gift. The ability to read pack bonds, to feel the emotional and political current of any wolf community. In the right hands it's a leadership tool. In Cain's hands it becomes a weapon for manipulation. He could use it to destabilize packs, identify weaknesses, fracture alliances from the inside." Sera looked at him steadily. "I am not going to let him have it." Eli crossed the garden. He stopped a few feet from her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his alpha presence, the particular gravity of him that she'd been carefully not leaning into for 22 days. "You brought this to my pack," he said. "To my daughter?" "Yes." She didn't flinch from it. "That is the part one can't excuse and won't try to. I believed I had more time before they traced me here. I was wrong. And if you want me gone—" "I didn't say that, Eli. I said you brought danger here," Eli said. "I didn't say I wanted you gone." His jaw was tight. "Those are different things." Sera held his gaze. Through the mate bond she felt him, the anger, yes, the alpha protectiveness that was furious at the threat to his daughter. But underneath it, something that hadn't been there 22 days ago. Something that had been building in pancake breakfasts and map conversations and one brief laugh over a bug house. "Who is Lord Cain to you?" Eli asked. "Exactly. My arranged betrothed. Not my mate." She held his eyes. "I have never felt the mate bond for Lord Cain." The silence between them changed quality. "But you feel it for someone," Eli said. Very quietly. It wasn't quite a question. Sera said nothing. Her gift and the mate bond were doing the same thing simultaneously, pointing at him with the absolute, unhelpful certainty of an arrow that had only one direction. "Lily said you smelled like silver and rain," Eli said. "The night you arrived." She told me again the next morning. She said. He stopped. Started again. She said she'd been dreaming about her father's mate. That the mate smelled like silver and rain. Eli. I've been trying not to know, he said. For 22 days I have been actively, deliberately trying not to know what I already know. His eyes found hers in the dark. Tell me I'm wrong. Sera thought about safety. About what it meant to say this out loud. About the hunters who kept coming and the crown she'd left behind and the 4 months she'd spent running from everything including this. You're not wrong, she said. The breath Eli released sounded like something he'd been holding for considerably longer than 22 days. He reached out. His hand found her face in the dark, careful, questioning, nothing like Lord Cain's presumption. His thumb traced her cheekbone once, and the mate bond sang with a completeness that made Sera close her eyes. A princess, he said. Low, almost to himself. A nanny who overstayed her 2 months. Sera corrected softly. My nanny, Lily announced from the doorway behind them, with the magnificent confidence of a child who had absolutely not stayed in bed and felt no remorse about it whatsoever. Eli dropped his hand. Turned. Lily Cross, I told you. I was worried, Lily said primly. She looked between them both with those 2 old eyes, and then smiled the smile of someone whose dream had just walked out of her head and into her garden. You finally talked. Go to bed, Eli said. Okay, Lily agreed. She looked at Sera. You're still staying, right? Sera looked at Eli. Eli looked at Sera. Yes, Sera said. I'm still staying. Lily nodded, satisfied, and disappeared back inside. The garden was quiet. The hunters were neutralized. Cain's pattern had been broken for tonight. And somewhere between a forged name and a garden wall and 22 days of cracks forming in 2 people who'd both decided, independently, that they were done hoping for things, something had shifted into place. It wasn't finished. Cain was still coming. The crown was still waiting. The truth had 22 days of catching up to do. But Lily already knew it was going to be okay. And Lily, as it turned out, was never wrong. Lord Cain arrived 3 days later with 40 wolves and the kind of confidence that came from never having been told no by anyone who survived the conversation. Sera heard his convoy before she saw it. The particular weight of it, horses, armored wolves, the low thrum of a force that expected to get what it came for. She was in the kitchen with Lily, teaching her the Silverwood royal recipe for honey bread, when the pack bond shifted from its new warmth back to something colder. Lily. Sera kept her voice light. Go find Bet, sweetheart. Stay in the kitchens with her until Daddy or I come to get you. Lily looked up from the dough with flour on her nose. Her small face was very still. Is it the bad man? Sera crouched to her level. Who told you about a bad man? I dreamed him, Lily said. He smells like metal and old anger. He thinks you belong to him. Her jaw set in an expression that was entirely her father's. You don't. No, Sera agreed. I don't. And we are going to make sure he understands that today. She tucked a curl behind Lily's ear. But I need you safe first. Can you do that for me? Lily considered this with the gravity of someone being asked to perform a critical function. I'll protect Bet, she decided. Perfect, Sera said. That's exactly the job. She waited until Lily's small footsteps disappeared down the hall. Then she straightened, rolled down her sleeves, and went to find Eli. He was already at the pack's main gate with Marcus and 6 of his senior warriors. He'd seen the convoy approaching from the watchtower. His expression, when Sera came to stand beside him, was the one she'd learned meant he was holding something very controlled behind a very even face. 40 wolves, Marcus said quietly. I counted 42. Sera corrected. 2 are hanging back on the western ridge. Archers. Marcus looked at her. Then at Eli. Eli's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I see them, Eli said. I have wolves on the ridge already. He didn't look at Sera. How do you want to handle this? The question surprised her. She'd expected him to take point, to place himself between her and Cain the way alphas instinctively position themselves between threats and anything they considered theirs. Instead he was asking her. It depends on what he does, Sera said. Cain operates on intimidation and the assumption that everyone will yield rather than escalate. If we match his force with stillness and don't give him a reactive target, there's a chance this stays political. He wants me alive and undamaged. I'm more useful to him that way. That limits what he'll do openly. And if he decides to stop being subtle, then we stop being subtle. Sera met Eli's eyes. He has 42 wolves. You have a pack that is on its home territory with 3 times the knowledge of this terrain. Numbers aren't everything. Eli looked at her for a long moment with that expression she'd stopped being able to read neutrally, the one that had started somewhere around day 8, and had been getting harder to look at directly ever since. Stay beside me, he said. Eli. Not because you need protection, he said, and the corner of his mouth did the thing that wasn't quite a smile, but had become her favorite thing about his face. Because I want you beside me. Sera pressed her lips together against something that wanted very much to be a smile of her own. All right. Lord Cain rode through the gate like he was already inside something he owned. He was physically impressive, she would grant him that. Broad, dark-haired, with a particular brand of alpha confidence that came from being the largest and most dangerous thing in every room he'd ever entered. He wore his pack's colors like armor and surveyed Thornfield Pack with the detached appraisal of a man cataloging an acquisition. His eyes found Sera immediately. Something moved through them, possession, satisfaction, and beneath both of those, a cold calculation that confirmed everything she'd suspected. He wasn't here because he wanted her. He was here because she was a resource that had gotten loose. Seraphina, Cain said. His voice was pleasant. You've led my people on quite a chase. Lord Cain. Sera kept her voice entirely neutral. Entirely royal. 10 years of court training deployed in 2 words. You'll forgive me if I don't apologize. His pleasant expression didn't change. You're looking well. Better than I expected, given the circumstances. His gaze moved to Eli with the dismissive efficiency of someone who didn't consider what he was looking at a meaningful obstacle. Alpha Cross. I appreciate your hospitality in housing my betrothed. I'll be taking her home now. She's not going anywhere, Eli said. His voice was very quiet. That particular quiet, Sera had learned, was the most dangerous version of him. Cain's eyebrows rose fractionally. I beg your pardon? She's my mate, Eli said. And she's made her choice. So I'll say this once, Lord Cain, take your wolves and leave my territory. The pleasant expression stayed on Cain's face. His eyes did not. Your mate, he repeated, with the tone of a man tasting something he found distasteful. A frontier alpha claiming a royal princess as a mate bond. How convenient for you. How true for us, Sera said. Something flickered in Cain's eyes then, a fracture in the pleasantness. He had expected her to be cowed by now. Expected the 4 months of running to have worn her down to something more manageable. He hadn't expected her standing at a frontier alpha's side looking like she'd decided something permanent. Seraphina, he said, and his voice had changed now, lower, with an edge underneath. Your mother agreed to this arrangement. The contract was signed under royal seal. You don't have the authority to simply. My mother, said a clear, carrying voice from the pack house entrance, has revoked that contract. Sera went very still. Queen Elara of Silverwood stood in the doorway of Thornfield Pack's main house wearing traveling clothes and the particular expression of a woman who had spent 4 months being afraid for her daughter and had decided, sometime in the last several days, that she was done being afraid of anyone. She was not alone. 6 members of the Royal Silverwood Guard flanked her, not Cain's borrowed wolves, but the Queen's own people, those bound directly to the crown. Mother, Sera breathed. Darling. Queen Elara's voice softened precisely once, for precisely that word. Then it hardened back to royal steel and turned on Cain like a blade. Lord Cain, I have in my possession documented evidence of your blackmail correspondence with my household. I have testimony from the families of your previous 3 royal mates, all of whom died under circumstances that, shall we say, strain credulity as accidents. And I have the formal revocation of your betrothal contract, signed and sealed 3 days ago by the Silverwood Royal Council. The pleasant expression was gone from Cain's face entirely. You have no authority. I am a queen on the territory of a formally recognized alpha who has declared the woman you claim as his mate. Elara's chin rose. You have no standing here. You have no contract. And in approximately 2 hours, you will have an international warrant for murder, blackmail, and the illegal extraction of royal bloodline gifts. She looked at him with the level, unimpressed gaze of someone who had made their decision and was done discussing it. Leave, Lord Cain. Before this moves past the political. The 42 wolves behind Cain were very quiet. Cain looked at Sera. At Eli. At the Queen. At his wolves, who were on unfamiliar terrain surrounded by a pack that knew every inch of it. At the royal guard who had appeared without any of his people noticing until they were already positioned. This isn't finished, Cain said. It is for today, Eli said, and the quiet in his voice had taken on a particular finality. And if you come back, Lord Cain, the conversation will be shorter and considerably less pleasant. Cain held for 3 seconds. Then he turned his horse and rode back through the gate. His wolves followed. The 2 archers on the ridge melted away as Eli's wolves closed in. The gate closed. Sera let out a breath she had been holding for 4 months. Then her mother was there, and the court composure that had carried her through a garden fight and a midnight confession and a confrontation with the man she'd been running from simply dissolved. She walked into her mother's arms and let herself be held the way she hadn't been held since she was very small, and the world was still a safe and certain thing. I'm sorry, her mother said quietly, into her hair. For the contract. For not seeing what he was sooner. For every night you spent running that you should have spent safe. You're here now, Sera said. I'm here now, Elara agreed. When Sera finally stepped back, she found Eli watching from a respectful distance, giving her the moment, which she understood now was entirely characteristic of a man who paid attention to what people needed. Marcus stood with him, and for the first time since she'd arrived, the beta was wearing an expression that looked almost like relief. Queen Elara turned to look at Eli with the particular assessment of a mother measuring the person her child had chosen. The silence lasted long enough to be significant. Alpha Cross, Elara said finally. I'm told my daughter has been residing in your pack house for 25 days. Yes, Your Majesty. As a nanny. Briefly, Eli said. Something moved through Elara's expression. It was not quite a smile. It was, Sera thought, the precise expression of a queen who had spent 4 months tracking her daughter's trail and had arrived to find something she hadn't been hoping for but perhaps should have been. She has her father's instincts, Elara said, for finding exactly the place she was supposed to be, even when she was trying to get somewhere else entirely. From inside the house came the sound of small running feet. The kitchen door burst open and Lily appeared, flour still on her nose, Betty's apron half wrapped around her, the leash of her patience with waiting clearly exhausted. She looked at the Queen. Then at Sera. Then at the closed gate where Cain's convoy had been. Did we win? Lily demanded. We won, Sera said. Lily considered this. Then she turned to Queen Elara with the complete absence of ceremony that was uniquely, magnificently hers. Are you Sera's mama? Elara blinked. Then, for the first time since she'd arrived wearing traveling clothes and royal steel, something softened in her face. I am. Good, Lily said, with absolute satisfaction. You can stay for honey bread. Sera was teaching me. It's not finished yet, but it will be. She looked between Sera and Eli with the serene confidence of someone whose dreams had a very good track record. Everything will be. Eli met Sera's eyes over his daughter's head. And this time, he didn't stop the smile. The warrant for Lord Cain's arrest came through 48 hours later. Sera was in the garden with Lily. The bug house had been completed, structurally sound, and was currently occupied by 3 beetles and 1 very optimistic spider, when Marcus brought the news. She read the document twice, then set it down on the garden wall and looked at the sky for a long moment. 4 months of running. Ended with a piece of paper. Is it over? Lily asked, not looking up from the beetles she was carefully relocating to the east wing. The dangerous part, Sera said. Yes. Good, Lily said. I was getting tired of Daddy making his worry face. He has a worry face? He has lots of faces, Lily said serenely. He only shows a few of them. But I know all of them. She placed the beetle with great deliberation. He has a new one lately. He only makes it when he's looking at you. Sera looked down at the top of Lily's dark head. What does it look like? Lily thought about this with appropriate seriousness. Like when you find something you lost a very long time ago, she said. And you didn't even know you were still looking. Sera had no answer for that. Her gift had gone very quiet, the way it did when something was simply and completely true. The conversation that needed to happen came that evening, after Lily was in bed and Queen Alara had retired to the guest quarters with the diplomacy of a woman who understood that certain discussions required privacy. Sera found Eli on the porch, which had become, she noticed, the place he went when he needed to think. He was sitting on the top step with a cup of coffee going cold in his hands, watching the tree line in the particular way that was less about vigilance, and more about having somewhere to put his eyes. She sat beside him. Not at a careful distance. Beside him. Close enough that their arms nearly touched, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the cool night air. Cain's warrant came through, she said. I know. Marcus told me. He didn't look at her. You're safe now. Yes. You don't have to stay. The words landed quietly. Without pressure. That was the most Eli thing about them. He was giving her the door without pushing her through it. Offering the out that honor required him to offer even though she could feel through the mate bond what offering it cost him. I know, Sera said. You have a kingdom, Eli said. A title. A mother who just rode across 3 territories to find you. A life that was interrupted, not ended. You have things to go back to. I do, Sera agreed. Lily will be. He stopped. Cleared his throat. Tried again. Lily is resilient. She'll be. Don't, Sera said gently. He went quiet. Don't tell me Lily will be fine, Sera said. Because we both know that's not the point, and we are too old and have been through too much to pretend it is. She turned to look at him. He was still watching the tree line, jaw tight, the careful containment he'd spent 3 years perfecting doing its best to hold. Ask me what you actually want to ask me. A long silence. The night moved around them, insects, a distant owl, the quiet sounds of a pack settled and safe. Will you stay? Eli said. Very quietly. Like something he'd been carrying for 25 days that had finally gotten too heavy to hold alone. Sera felt the mate bond settle into her chest like a key finding a lock. I came here to disappear, she said. I had a plan. 2 months, cold trail, move on. I had a list of packs that would work as temporary cover and a fairly solid exit strategy, and absolutely no intention of. She stopped. Looked at his profile, the strong line of it, the careful stillness, the thing behind his eyes that he'd spent 3 years hiding and 25 days slowly, reluctantly letting her see. And then a 5-year-old told me I smelled like silver and rain and that she dreamed about me. Eli's mouth curved. Just slightly. Lily has a gift, Sera continued softer. She sees things that are true before the rest of us are ready to admit them. She saw this. She saw us. She held his gaze. And I have spent 25 days trying very hard not to see it too, because wanting something and being allowed to have it are not the same thing, and I have never in my life been certain which category you fell into. And now? Eli said. Now Lord Cain has a warrant and my mother has revoked the contract, and the thing I was running from is finished. Sera turned to face him fully. And I am still here. Not because I have to be. Not because there's nowhere else. But because somewhere in 25 days of pancake breakfasts and territorial maps and a man who told me it doesn't leave this border without going through me first. Her voice went quiet. I stopped running. And it wasn't because I ran out of road. Eli set his cold coffee down on the step. I haven't. He started and stopped. Started again. Since Mara died, I haven't let myself. I told myself it was about Lily. That I was protecting her from the disruption of. A long exhale. But Lily knew from the first day. She always knows. And I think I knew too. He looked at her then, finally, directly, with all the careful containment dropped. I think I knew the moment you told me you moisturize. Sera laughed. It came out startled and genuine, and completely undignified, and it felt like setting something down. "That was a terrible line," Eli said, and the smile was all the way there now, full and quiet and absolutely worth the 25 days it had taken to get to it. "It was the best I had," Sera said. "It was enough," Eli said. And then, with the same economy he brought to everything, no performance, no preamble, just a decision made and acted on, he reached out and took her hand. Not the careful question of the garden, 3 nights ago. This was something settled. The mate bond didn't surge so much as exhale, a long, slow release of tension that had been building since the moment she'd walked through his gate smelling like silver and rain and disrupted every plan she'd made for her own life. They sat there while the night moved around them. Not talking. Not needing to. The conversation with Queen Elara happened the next morning, at the kitchen table, with honey bread and 3 cups of tea and Lily positioned between her grandmother and Sera with the satisfied solidity of someone who had organized this outcome, and was pleased with how it had come together. "The council will expect you to return," Elara said. She was addressing Sera but watching Eli, who was leaning against the counter with his coffee, hot this time, listening with the quiet attention he brought to things that mattered. "I know," Sera said. "There are duties. Responsibilities. Your title doesn't simply—" "Mother." Elara paused. "I'm not abdicating," Sera said. "I'm not walking away from Silverwood or my title or my responsibilities. I know what I am and what that means." She looked at her mother steadily. "But I am also not going back to a life that requires me to be only that. I have a mate. I have—" She glanced at Lily, who was eating honey bread with both hands and pretending not to listen. "I have a family. And I need you to tell me there is a way to have both." Elara was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to Eli. "Alpha Cross. The Silverwood Royal Council has discussed the formalization of the mate bond between you and my daughter. There is a precedent, albeit an old one, for a royal princess to maintain her title and responsibilities as a crown representative while bonding with an alpha of a recognized territory. Thornfield would receive formal royal recognition. You would hold the title of Royal Consort Alpha." She paused. "It would mean occasional travel to the capital. Council obligations. The particular tedium of royal ceremony." Eli looked at Sera. Sera looked at Eli. "I can handle tedium," Eli said. "Good," Elara said, with the precise satisfaction of a queen who had arrived at the outcome she'd been steering toward and was professionally declining to show it. "Then we have an arrangement." "I knew it," Lily announced, to no one in particular. "I knew it the whole time." "You did," Sera agreed. "From the dream," Lily confirmed. She picked up her honey bread. "Silver and rain. I told you." "You told me," Eli said. Something in his voice was different than it had been for 3 years, lighter, as if something had been set down and he hadn't yet got used to not carrying it. He looked at his daughter, then at the woman his daughter had known before he did, then at the queen sitting at his kitchen table as if queens ate honey bread in Thornfield every Tuesday. His pack. His daughter. His mate. His home, which had been cold for 3 years and was now, undeniably, entirely itself again. The mate bond was quiet and certain in his chest. Not urgent. Not aching. Just present, the way a hearth is present when you live with it long enough that you stop noticing it specifically and start noticing only what the house feels like with it lit. Warm. The mating ceremony was held 2 weeks later, in the Thornfield Pack's main courtyard, under an autumn sky that was exactly the particular shade of gold that Sera had described to Lily once as her favorite color. "How did you know?" Eli had asked, when the sky appeared. "I didn't," Sera said. "Lily planned the date. Said the sky would be right." Eli had looked at his daughter, who was wearing her best dress and her most serene expression and had absolutely coordinated the guest arrangements with Queen Elara's secretary. "Of course she did," he said. The pack gathered, the whole of Thornfield, plus the Silverwood royal contingent, plus 3 neighboring alphas who had received formal invitations written in Lily's careful, enormous 5-year-old handwriting and had attended partly out of curiosity and partly because nobody had the heart to decline her. When Eli spoke the words that completed the bond, Old words, pack words, the ones that had been spoken in every wolf mating since before writing existed. Sera felt them land in her chest like something that had always been there being named for the first time. When she spoke her own, she felt the pack bond shift underneath her, Thornfield's cold, grief-heavy current warming completely, finally, all the way through. Not her doing, not entirely. But her presence here. Her choice to stay. Her decision to be exactly what she was in exactly this place. The pack felt it. She felt them feel it. And through her gift she felt the collective exhale of a community that had been waiting, without quite knowing it, for the particular person who would remind them how to be warm. Lily was crying. Not sad crying, the overwhelmed kind, the kind that happens when something you have wanted for a very long time arrives and is exactly as good as you dreamed it would be. Sera crouched down and held out her arms. Lily walked into them with the certainty of someone who had never doubted this moment would come. "Silver and rain," Lily whispered. "Silver and rain." Sera agreed, and held her tight. Eli's hand found her shoulder, steady, present, his. When she stood, Lily between them, she felt the three of them click into something that had no name more specific than right. The princess who had run from a crown had found something that fit better. The alpha who had locked away his softness had found the person worth unlocking it for. And the little girl who dreamed in silver and rain had simply, patiently, been right all along. Some things know before we do. Some homes find us while we're looking for somewhere else. And some stories end exactly where they were always supposed to, not with a crown returned or a battle won, but with a hand found in the dark and a child between two people who chose each other and a pack that finally felt like itself again. This was always Lily's story, really. She just let the rest of them catch up. If this ending found you somewhere soft, if Lily's silver and rain broke you open just a little, I want to know about it. Leave me a comment right now and tell me how this story made you feel, which moment you'll carry with you, and whether Lily is officially the best character in this entire universe, because I think she might be. Your comments are what keep this channel alive, and they genuinely make my day every single time. And if you have been here for all 5 parts and you are still not subscribed, I am looking at you with so much affection right now, please subscribe. It is free, it takes 2 seconds, and it means that the next story finds you instead of you having to go looking for it. I will see you in the next one, beautiful souls. Take care of yourselves.